What is going on, everybody? This is Jackson Caudell with another episode of the All Yellow Jackets podcast, coming to you on Monday afternoon, September 4th, just a few days after the Georgia Tech's heartbreaking loss to Louisville on Friday night. We're going to dig into that, I'll just give my thoughts on it, some adjustments that need to be made on both sides of the ball, talk a little bit about South Carolina State, and just kind of going forward. I know it obviously wasn't the result anybody wanted, especially after such a good first half, but I do think there are some bright spots, and I think there are some negatives and some things that concern me. But if you're watching this on YouTube, either live or later, if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel, that would do a lot. I would greatly appreciate it. I love anybody that tunes in and reads any of the content on the website or listens to any of the podcast, watches on YouTube. I greatly appreciate it. So if you could like and subscribe there, give reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to this, will be available after this show. So if you're an audio only person, but I guess let's turn the clock back a few days and go back to Friday night and look the start of the game. We'll dig into. There was obviously a lot to go right in the first half, a lot to go wrong in the second half, but I think the thing, in the first quarter, that very first drive, I think there was kind of an uh-oh moment, like in when I was watching it, like that batted pass that went up in there and was picked off was very reminiscent of, Georgia Tech teams from the past 3 to 4 years. And I think my main takeaway from those first few drives is like the red zone defense was pretty big. Like that they held strong. But I think there was also some negatives there in those first early drives. Like Louisville had a drop pass on that very first drive after they took over. They had a big run to get on first down, and then they had a drop pass. So that could have been more points for the Cardinals. So that was something that I took note of. Like, even though Georgia Tech held them to a field goal, Louisville did leave some points out on the field in a couple of these red zone possessions, whether it was just some missed throws by Jack Plummer or just a straight out drop. But I thought the defense in the first quarter was pretty strong. I think the game plan from Louisville to start out with was they definitely wanted to run the ball. I think that was the case. And I think they made some adjustments in the second half as far as what they wanted to do. But when you go over to the other side of the ball for Georgia Tech, it was clear they wanted to get the ball out to their playmakers and their speedy guys like Malik Rutherford, Christian Leary, and some of their receivers in space and get it out immediately. Like it wasn't Georgia Tech didn't really want to drop back and wait there a long time. Like they wanted to get the ball out quick, let their receivers make plays. I mean, the first play of the game was just full of pop pass to Malik. He took it, had a pretty nice gain. But that was something that Louisville obviously took away later. And when I'm looking at it here, I thought there was some misfires by Haynes King, especially in that first quarter. I thought there was, I know he had a couple when he misses high. So I think it was a little bit of the offense getting settled down in that first quarter. And I think that was something that, going forward, I think it's going to be something they're going to want to start faster and start a lot cleaner than they did in that first quarter. But those I think are the main takeaways. And then, the second quarter was just a big explosion. I thought the running game was really, really good. And I thought the two guys that really made that work, and two guys I was impressed with, was Weston Franklin and Joe Fusile, guys that played every single snap on Friday night. And they showed a big leap from where they were a year ago. Now, it's just one game, but I think if you see this continued improvement from both of those guys, they were the reason a lot of those holes, in some of those zone plays and some of those stretches that Georgia Tech was running were working so well. And it reflects now. I don't know how many of y'all put stock into PFF grades, but they both graded out really well, and it did show. And so I thought that was a big thing, especially in the second quarter when Georgia Tech was ripping off these runs and explosive plays. Was, man, they were really moving guys inside, and I think that's something to watch going forward. Maybe it could be Louisville's front is a little bit subpar. That could be the case, but I think right now you got to give those guys credit for how they come out, especially after some poor performances last year. Now, I think one thing I'm anxious to see that worked in the second quarter that I want to see going forward is a lot of the big plays were really quick throws out on the perimeter. It wasn't a lot of just drop back, let things develop and hit it. It was, okay, get the ball out, make some guys miss, and then gain chunk plays. I mean, that's what happened on the Jamal Haynes play. That's what happened on the Chase Lane play. You did have the pass to Malik, the 55-yarder to Malik in I think it was the second quarter there when things were just really going well. But I mean, first half, you couldn't ask really for a lot more to go right. I think the biggest thing that went wrong, in my opinion, was the offensive tackle play. Obviously, they switched up. Ethan McKinney, the true freshman, got a lot of playing time on Friday night, and there was just so much pressure in the first half and in the second half, especially when the fumble happened near the end of the game, where man, there was just a lot of pressure just coming off the edge, and it affected so many throws. Like, I mean, I counted at least 5 or 6 plays where Louisville would just get immediate pressure off the edge. And it wasn't that the defensive ends were doing anything special. They just straight up beat guys off the edge, whether it was just with a quick move or they would just get to the QB just right off the jump. Like it was not great from the offensive attack perspective. And it was very reminiscent of what we've seen in recent years from Georgia Tech offensive line. So the offensive tackle situation, I do think has to get worked out a little bit, but they're not going to face like the defense. I think Louisville has a good defensive line, but there are going to be even better defensive lines down the stretch. Obviously, you got games against Clemson, Georgia. I think Miami's got a pretty good defensive line, so they have to get better and they have to clean up a lot of things when it comes to the offensive tackle position. And one of the adjustments I hope they make is I didn't see a lot of like running backs chipping the backs or the tight ends really just helping out every play. Like I think that's something that might have to happen. And the tight ends didn't make a ton of plays in the passing game. I know Seether caught that one touchdown at the beginning of the game, but I think they're going to have to – the offensive staff has got to find ways to adjust where teams are just not getting pressure immediately off the edge and affecting Haynes King because he's got to have some time to sit in the pocket. And when he did, good things happen. Obviously a lot of plays happened on the perimeter and getting the ball out quickly, but we talked about in our Louisville preview is, 3 keys to victory that Tech had to have was create explosive plays, win the turnover battle, and get a pass rush and affect Louisville. And you only got one of those things. Now, it was a positive that the offense got so many explosive plays, but going forward, it's just going to be, all right, when those plays aren't happening, can Georgia Tech grind things out offensively and run the ball? They couldn't do that in the second half and put the game away, which is concerning. And I thought the play calling in the second half was a little concerning as well. But I think when you look at the big picture on offense, I thought just going down these positions, I thought Haynes King overall had a pretty good game. It obviously wasn't an elite effort or anything. It wasn't there were some misses. I think he missed on some throws, and I don't think either one of the turnovers were his fault. I think the ball batted in the air definitely was not his fault. I think the pressure on the fumble, it was poor protection. So, but 19 of 32, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns. I thought he made a couple of really nice throws. I know he had a throw out to the far hash to Chase Lane. I think it was in the third quarter, I believe. And then he made some plays in the second quarter, obviously, as well. His scrambling ability was something that I've talked about a little bit. It's something that Georgia Tech's going to use more than he ever did at Texas A&M, and that was something you saw. Like he really did make plays with his legs. He extended some drives. I think some of the best plays in what was overall a bad third quarter came on Haynes King's scrambles. Like it wasn't even design runs. It was things weren't opening up downfield, and he just took off. I think he used his athleticism really well to get things moving down the field. But I also don't want him carrying the ball 10 times in every game. Like that's just not sustainable. Do I want him to be able to use his running threat to keep defenses off balance on occasion? Yes. He took some hard hits. Like he had the targeting call, which some thought was questionable, but I thought it was fine. But I think his ability to pick things up on third down, extend drives. I mean, I think he had 63 yards rushing. So, nearly 400 total yards from your quarterback. It's something that hasn't happened on a consistent basis. And that's something he's going to have to show is, getting chunk plays and being decisive. And I thought he was. So overall, I'd probably give it maybe a B grade if I'm being honest. That some of the missed throws and some things in the second half is definitely some stuff he's got to clean up. But it was his first game as a starting quarterback here at Georgia Tech, and like now you're just looking for week to week improvement. And obviously, your opponent this week is not going to overwhelm you. So looking for him to clean some things up this week is definitely something. Going to the running backs, I thought first half I thought the approach was pretty sound. I thought obviously Trey Cooley exploded for the 2 touchdowns, and Jamal Haynes, man, like he really added an explosive element to this running game. Like he was making cuts, he was making moves. I thought he also added some in the passing game too. He's a converted receiver, so like his hands should be fine. Like he really his yards after catch, making guys miss. I thought he really added a different element to the backfield, and they fed the hot hand. Like they kept going to him, and that's something I think they're going to have to continue to do going forward. Now, he couldn't get going in the second half. I don't think it was, of course, all his fault, but I thought it was a pretty solid debut from somebody that is just now playing the position in college for the first time. He did play it a little bit in high school, but he um, converted receiver, and I didn't know how many snaps he was going to get going in, but he really carved out a role for himself. I thought Dante was solid when he was in running the ball. True freshman Evan Dickens got some carries. I think he only played 3 total snaps, if I'm correct. But and overall, I thought Key said coming into the game it was going to be a running back by committee approach anyway, and he stuck to that. I think going forward, it'll be interesting to see now. Is it just going to be a couple guys, especially around the hot hand? Like I think they stuck with Jamal. I did want to see Trey get some more carries in the second half. I thought that they really could have used him in that aspect. But I thought overall solid game from the running backs. I think the second half is going to take away from what was a really, really good first half for them. But now you just got to be more consistent with it. You finished with 175 yards for the game, but a lot of that came in the second quarter. So we'll see going down. Moving on to the receivers, I thought it was a pretty good game overall. Like I've been as high as anybody on Malik Rutherford going into the season. And he showed the part. He was the most targeted receiver. He had the big 55-yard catch. He looked explosive, and that's something they're going to need going forward. Disappeared a little bit in the second half, and that's something that they just have to consistently find ways to get the ball in his hands. But you have to mix it up. Like it can't just be, all right, we're going to do this little pop pass here. We're going to do a little short pass here. Like it's getting the ball in his hands consistently in a variety of ways, and that's something that's on the offensive staff to figure out moving forward. I thought Chase Lane, obviously the 48-yard touchdown, he was big. I know that Dominic Blaylock was solid as a punt returner. I know he didn't make the biggest impact in the receiving game, but I think it's going to be having a new quarterback and having so many new receivers. It's going to take a little time for that passing game to gel, which was a worry for me going into the game. But it looked better than maybe even I thought it would in the first game of the season against a pretty solid opponent. I know Louisville is not like a top 20 defense, but like they're solid enough, and I think that those guys are gonna go on to have a good year. So going forward with the receiver position, it's just going to see who has the best chemistry with Haynes King, and going forward, how can those guys continue to be more consistent? Like they just the second half is no big plays. There was just no big plays to be found. Eric Singleton Jr. is the guy I was going to get to next. I've said it all off season. He was going to get some playing time as a true freshman, and he really showed it. Like he caught the touchdown. He had to go up for it a little bit. I thought it was a little bit of a bad throw by Haynes King, if we're going to be honest. But I do think he showed his ability to get on the field, and it's only going to get more. Like I think games like this Saturday against a team like South Carolina State is a perfect opportunity for him to get more involved and see a lot more snaps. So receiver position was solid. I think everybody's been, or most Georgia Tech fans I know, have been looking forward to seeing that talent there. And it was on display a little bit. I know DJ Moore didn't play as much as some thought he would. Neither did Avery Boyd. But I think overall, you saw the explosiveness this group holds. I think it's a better group than people think. And I think it's just going to take time to get the chemistry on the same level. Moving forward with the tight end position, unfortunately, I think it was a little bit of what we've seen too much of here in recent seasons. I think, there were some drops. I know Seether had that drop in the second half, and that was a really, really tough play. Like I'll say that, like that was not an easy catch to make, but it was one he probably needed to make in that point of the game. I think Dylan Leonard was, it was hit or miss. Like I think Benson had a couple of nice catches, but overall, I think it was just very much lacking in the tight end position, and they have to figure something out at the tight end position to really make this passing attack more complete. Like the more weapons you have, the better you are. And when you're completely unafraid of one position on the field, like it's just you're limiting yourself. Like that's the best way I can say it. Offensive line, I think it's two ways to look at it. I think the offensive tackle position going forward really worries me because I think Ethan McKinney is going to be a good player. he is a true freshman playing left tackle in Power 5 football. Like that, there's going to be some adjustments going to have to be made, and that's why I think they have to do a better job of helping whoever is at left or right tackle out there out. Like it's just not a position of strength right now. It's just not where you have NFL level guys where you can leave out there on an island and block. They need to make better use of the running backs, chipping on those guys. They need to make better use of, if the tight ends are not going to be involved in the passing game, like they need to be involved in the blocking game and helping out up front. Like that's what's going to have to happen. So the interior I thought was pretty good. Joe Fusile and Weston Franklin had good games. Obviously, Jordan Williams got banged up, and I thought Connor came in and did pretty well. Like obviously, no position on this team graded out perfectly, but I thought the interior of the offensive line played reasonably well. Moving over to the defensive line, just for the game, not great. My biggest worry going into this game was the pass rush, and I think that held true. None of the edge rushers affected the quarterback in any meaningful way, and that's not even all their job. Like they didn't really affect the running game much. I mean, Louisville finished with over 200 yards rushing, averaged nearly 7 yards a carry. There was just a lot of that. They couldn't hold the edge down. The interior of the defensive line really disappointed me. That was a position I thought was going to be a strength, and it's just one game. But nobody really made a difference in either pass rushing or stopping the run. So that's something that's going to have to be addressed going forward, and they're just going to have to do a lot better. Like it's as simple as that. Linebackers, I thought were overall pretty solid. I think Trinilius Tatum, when he was used as a blitzer, I thought he did pretty well. It was sparingly, but I thought he played pretty well. Paul Moala, I thought he played reasonably well. I think that it's a position that worries me because Louisville in the second half, you could see that their game plan was get guys on the edge and get them in space. They used it in the running game. They ran a play. They would pitch it out of shotgun and use it relentlessly. Like they used that multiple times and got to the edge and got big yards. They would send guys in motion and hit them with a pass, and then when they would make a couple guys miss, the tackling, and not just at the linebacker position, but overall was just really poor. But I thought going forward, those are probably your two guys at linebacker. And then the secondary, there were some bright spots. Haitley Miles Brooks got hurt. They're going to need him back, but safety is a position that they are deep at. I thought Clayton Powell-Lee played a really, really good game. He had the interception. He had a really key pass breakup in the third quarter. And yeah, it was in the third quarter on a third down stop. Bad news was on the very next play, probably the biggest play of the game, the score was 28-13. Tech could have got off the field right off the bat, and they gave up a fourth down pass play, due in part to he missed the tackle. So it was a good game overall for him. I thought Jalen King played solid. I think having his experience out there, I know he did have one blown play on a touchdown, but KJ Wallace broke up a few passes. I thought overall the secondary played good, but they had an issue tackling, as did the entire defense. I think the biggest issue is just how the lack of athleticism and speed at some positions, especially I think at linebacker, really showed in this game. And that you could tell by Louisville's game plan in the second half, because again, they were trying to get guys out in the flat and get them into space, and Tech just could not tackle. Like they couldn't tackle, and they looked slow getting to the ball. That may just be a game one adjustment that they're going to have to make, and they're going to have to find ways to better play on the perimeter. But tackling overall on this team is the main issue I'm worried about on defense right now. And that just led to some big runs. After the Haynes King fumble, what happened? 74-yard touchdown, because they looked worn down and they just arm tackling. And that's, I don't know if it was a conditioning issue or not, but just looking tired and missing as many tackles as they did going forward it's an issue. And that's, I think, the biggest defensive adjustment that they're going to have to make for week 2. I think, talking about maybe some standout players from this game, I thought Haynes King was good. Obviously not perfect, but I thought for his first game as a Yellow Jacket, a lot of new receivers going up against a decent defense. I thought it was an overall solid debut. I think Jamal Haynes was something to take away from this game, and the element he can add to the offense, I think, was obviously pretty good. I think the receivers as a whole at least showed their potential. It's just going to be a consistency thing from now. And I thought if there was a guy on defense that stood out, it was Clayton Powell-Lee. Like I think the interception was really big. I thought he looked really good in coverage. If he can just start making tackles and playing better in space and breaking down, I think that the sky's the limit for him. I think he can be a really, really good player. And I thought he had a good week one. KJ Wallace was another one I thought that stood out. He had, I think, 3 pass breakups, if I'm not mistaken. I thought it was just an overall solid game from him in the nickel. And in the secondary overall, like I knew Louisville was going to come in throwing it. If they hadn't had a couple of busted plays where they had some guys fall down and some guys missing, like that's where Louisville got some chunk plays, and they didn't really do that much in this game. A lot of Louisville's passing game came on yards after catch where Georgia Tech missed tackles. So I thought overall, well, we talked about how good the secondary can be, and I thought it looked the part outside of a couple busted plays, but now it's just going to come down to, okay, can you clean up the mental mistakes and can you tackle better? Like those are the 2 biggest things right now, I think, going forward. And the adjustments that are going to have to be made. I think overall, Louisville is a good offense. They have a really good offensive coach, and they have a lot of really good athletes. Like Jamari Thrash is going to be one of the best receivers that Georgia Tech plays all year. Like that's just the truth. That offensively, Louisville's going to be one of the best teams that Georgia Tech plays all year, and we'll see what happens. But I think that the adjustments are going to have to be made on the defensive side of the ball. Now, I guess just looking forward, going forward in week 2. Offensively, I think it's just going to be getting consistent. I think everybody was disappointed in how the second half turned out, whether it was in the running game, whether it was not taking enough downfield shots. I think that's going to have to be the thing is, can you play more than one good quarter? Because really outside of the second quarter, the offense wasn't great. You had a couple of plays here and there. Haynes King had some scrambles and some running, but overall it just wasn't very consistent. So it's going to be, all right, maybe you don't get all 4 quarters good, but can you get 3 instead of just 1? Can you get to 4 really good quarters of offensive football? And I think it's going to be, can they adjust to blocking better on the edges with the tackles? I think that's going to have to be another adjustment and how they do so. Obviously, South Carolina State doesn't have NFL players on the defensive line, but it's still all the same. You want to see them go out and handle their business. Defensively, the fundamentals on defense are just what I'm going to look for when I'm at the game on Saturday. Like, are they tackling better? Are they playing more aggressive? And do they just not get tired in the second half? Like, it's not going to be it shouldn't be a close game, but like, are they just playing better fundamental football on the defensive side of the ball? So look, and I think it was a disappointing result. Like there's no way to shape it, but I do think there's some positive things to take from it. One, the explosive plays on offense were something that was really good. Now the consistency, as I've said, I think a million times already in just 23 minutes, you got to get more consistent in doing it. But like this team was not explosive at all last year, and the fact that they created several explosive plays through the passing game, you had the touchdown to Chase Lane, you had a big play to Malik Rutherford, Jamal Haynes. The running game was in the second quarter getting 6-7 yards pretty consistently. All right, now can you do that more? Like it's just building off of that and just making sure it's doing some in every single quarter in every game. Like it can't just be, all right, we're going to have one good quarter here, one good quarter here. It's got to be more consistent. I know that he talked about it after the game. Like they now it's just putting it together for a full game. Defensively, like you're not playing a great opponent this week, so frankly, I just want to see you go out and dominate. Like that's going to be the thing. Is just I think South Carolina State has scored 10 points in 2 weeks. They've played Jackson State and they've played Charlotte. So obviously Georgia Tech is better than both of those teams. So just go out, handle your business, and dominate, and then it's on to Ole Miss week. So I still think a bowl game is possible. I know. I hope that this is not a game you look back on if Georgia Tech gets 5 wins and say, well, damn, we could have had the Louisville game. But you still got games like just looking at some of the schedule, like Virginia looked dreadful this week. Boston College lost to Northern Illinois. Got the game this weekend, got the game against Bowling Green. I think Syracuse is a winnable game. But the margin for error is slimmer. Like nobody should think any different. Like that this was a winnable game and it was disappointing not to get it. But the sky's not falling just yet, and I still think that there are things to build on, but definitely things to improve. And I think that that's going to be the thing is, all right, can they clean up these mistakes, and do we hopefully not see this in week 4 and week 5 and week 6, and hopefully they're tackling better. Hopefully they don't get worn down as easily in the second half, which some of that falls on the offensive hands. Like the offense had way too many 3-and-outs and way too many mistakes in the second half, and it just kept putting the defense out there more and more. So those are the things that I'm looking for, and should get a result this week, and we'll take on the schedule as it goes. But that'll do it for me today. I hate how the result turned out on Friday, but we're just going to move forward from that. And like I said, if subscribing on the YouTube channel, give a like and subscribe there. Wherever you listen to any podcast, I greatly appreciate it. Go check out allyellowjackets.com for any of your latest Georgia Tech needs. There's going to be a lot of content this week, no matter who the opponent is. So we'd really appreciate anybody going and checking that out. But for anybody tuning in today, I thank you a lot. It means a lot to me, and we'll see you later this week. I should have a new episode should be coming out on Wednesday, as we're just kind of previewing the game coming up on Saturday. But that's going to do it for me today. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you this week.